Good morning. Welcome to this month's Feature Spotlight webinar. I'm Dale Franks. There is much to discuss today, so we do need to get to it here fairly quickly. So over the next 30 minutes or so, I'll be discussing a new training course that's available for you on our training website, some upcoming enhancements to the product, and as always, some of the bug fixes. The new training course that I have devised is called V6 UI Familiarization. It is currently available on the training portal. So you can go to the training portal, find this training course, and log in to take it. It is solely about the version 6 UI and the changes that have been made to the UI. So it walks you through the UI changes and then gives you, in the second lesson, more information about how you can set up the different access levels in the new UI. In the old Process Director UI, so everything up through version 5, there were really only there's really only one access level, honestly, although I guess system administrators had a second level of access, as did partition administrators that gave you fuller control. There are now 3 access levels. So you still have system administrators and partition administrators, but there's also developer level access, which gives you access to the homepage and the content list, but doesn't give you access to any of the administrative features. So the access that you have to the UI can now be granted on a more granular level at both the user and the group level. And this new training course goes through all that. And those are significant changes from the way that things were done in the version 5 and lower UI. And so this course covers how you configure different users for their different level of access, as well as general familiarization with the UI. So if you are a system administrator and you have been using version 5 and you are ready to switch to version 6, this is probably a good course for you. It's not that long. It's about 25, 30 minutes or so to walk you through the changes in the UI and what the basic elements are and how they work. So if you are upgrading from 5 to 6, and I know that we still have some customers who are on 5 and at least on 5 in production, who are just trying out version 6 right now on dev or staging, it would just be a good course to take, I think, for existing customers who just want to get familiar with the changes in the new UI, because they are more than just visual changes. So it is a relatively important course. If you don't have access to the training portal, I know most of you had access to the old Litmos portal. That portal is gone, and we have changed training portals. If you would like access, contact your account manager or contact me, or simply throw in a tech support ticket and say, I'd like to have access to the training portal. However you communicate that to us, I will ensure that you get the link to the self-sign-up page so that you can sign up for the Process Director training on the new training portal, and you can take your course. Several enhancements have been added to the product, not just the product itself, but also to the CTs. So we'll go through and take a look at that. First is a new custom variable called Use Auto Signatures. The point of this custom variable is to provide signature images on the fly for users who do not have a signature image uploaded into the system. One of the problems with having the signature image, and indeed the user image, is that you have to depend on users generally to upload them, or even worse, to provide you with a signature and a picture that you have to upload as an administrator, which is quite a task, especially if you have thousands of users. If you allow users in their user profile to upload their own signature images and their own pictures, well, fine, that's on them. But what happens if they don't upload them? You don't get signature images in any of the routing slips, for example, on either the timeline instance or on the form itself on the routing slip. You don't see a signature image because they haven't uploaded one into the system. So while this custom variable, that's test user emails, that's not even the right system variable. Use auto signatures, that's the system variable we want to see. What it is it's set to false by default. However, if you set this use auto signature custom variable to true, then for any user who does not have a signature image uploaded into the system will automatically generate a signature image for them. I'm not entirely sure that we have settled on what font that will be in that we generated on the fly, but there will be signature images for everyone if you decide to set this custom variable to true. Obviously, you don't have to set that custom variable to true. That is entirely up to you. But if you do, those auto signatures will be generated for all of the routing slips in the system. There's a new feature on knowledge views. It's called Add Me to Task. So in a knowledge view definition, if you go to the Options tab, there is a new option right here. It's called Add Me to Task. If you check that and you have a knowledge view that returns timeline instances, then you can add the Add Me to Task icon. Or for version 6, it's not really Add Me to Task. It is Add Me to Task, but it's not an icon. It's a menu item that appears on the V6 version called Add Me to Task. So in this case, I have a knowledge view that just returns me what my active processes are that are running on the system and what tasks are currently running. And I can just add me to task or add myself to the task by clicking the Add Me to Task menu. It won't work for me to demonstrate to you because this is my server and I am already the user that has been added to all of these tasks, so it won't add me again. However, the Add Me to Task, which I just clicked, it says the users have been added. As a practical matter, I was already the user, so nothing really happened, but from the UI perspective, it looks like I added myself to the task, even though I was already the task participant. Now, this is what it looks like in V6 with the little menu here. I hesitate to call it a hamburger menu because it's not 3 dashes, it's 3 dots. So I don't know what to call that menu icon. It's just a 3-dot icon. I guess that's as close as I can get to it. But that only shows up, of course, if you're using the version 6 UI. If you are still going over here to the Configure tab and you don't have the Process Director 6 style and you hit Update and Run, it gives you the old ugly icon, which when you mouse over will show you the Add Me to Task. So what this enables you to do is just to run a knowledge view to return these timeline instances, see what tasks are running, and if you would like to be a participant in that task, you can simply click the Add Me to Task icon or menu, and you can be added to the task automatically so that you can participate in whatever activity is running. We have updated 2 of the custom tasks, import files from file system and JSON to CSV from REST call. So there is a question. Hold on. So before I go any further, Q&A, I call it the vertical ellipsis. Well, I would call it that too if I wasn't so lazy. But whatever it's called, it's the 3-dot menu. And see, 3-dot is many less syllables than vertical ellipses. So therefore, it is the lazier option. In any event, let's take a look at these two custom tasks that we have changed and the two changes that have been made for them. On import files from file system, the major change that has been made is on the advanced tab at the very top. We have added a file path filter. The reason we have added that is to enable you to put in a partial or full file path so that you can only return documents from a specified file path. Now, there is some magic, some jiggery pokery that goes on with this file path filter as well, because it will accept, according to the JIRA ticket for the resolution of this particular story, it does accept regex expressions so that you can set up whatever regex expression you want to be able to pull from a single set of file paths or matching file paths. And once you get to that file path, it will just import documents from that file path or also, I think, from subfolders as well. I'm not entirely sure about that. I would need to ask the engineering team. That just occurred to me as to what it does with subfolders. But what it does do is it gets rid of any of the parent folders. It takes you right to the file path that you want to pull documents that are located in that file path. Now, the JSON to CSV from REST call custom task is a new custom task in and of itself. It has only been out for a couple of weeks now, and we made a change. I say a couple of weeks. I think it's been about a month, maybe a month and a half, but a couple of weeks ago, we did make a change. Previously, for the JSON to CSV from REST call, what the CT expected when you made a REST call was that all the fields would contain scalar values, which is to say a single value per field. Well, that's not always true, because JSON can quite easily return arrays. Well, for that matter, so can XML, but we didn't really think about arrays in terms of pulling back data and putting it into a CSV file. There was a customer, though, that did say that some of their API calls do, in fact, return array fields, and they wanted us to be able to accept array fields for this particular CT. So in the add mapping, or in the result mapping section, it used to just be value, outer XML and inner XML. We have added array value. So it does require, when you're configuring the CT, that you know that you are going to be returning an array for a particular field. Once you select array value as the value that is going to be returned, you have a secondary option, which is this here, in-cell separator for array values. So what's going to happen is that all of the values that are returned in that array will be placed in some sort of list. Now, by default, because you are exporting to a comma separated list, so we can't really use commas as the field separators. The default is to use the semicolon as the field separator. And forgive me, I know that's very hard to see on Zoom, but that is indeed a semicolon in that little box there. And so all of the array fields that are returned by that particular field name of your JSON data, all of the array values will be placed into the CSV file, and they'll all be separated with a semicolon between them. You can change this in-cell separator to another character if you want. So if you wanted to put the bar character in, that would be fine. I would, of course, strongly urge that you not use the comma character as your in-cell separator to export to your comma separated list, because it's going to be quite confusing when you open up that CSV file in Excel. So recommendation, stick with the default of the semicolon, or maybe replace it, if you are, with a dash or a bar character for your separator. But I think semicolon will work well for most purposes. But it will now accept array values from your JSON, and that is a little bit of an improvement for that custom task. And one final thing that we have done is we have added a highlight color property to the tab strip control. So if we want to look here, which we do not want to look here, we want to close that. We want to look here. No, we don't want to look here. Where do we want to look? I have many things open on the very top of my screen. I think actually I just want to go to the form design view in the same tab we were in. No, I don't. Oh, what have I done? I have lost control of where I was supposed to be. Form control tags, that's not it. I have closed that window. So let me go. Well, I'm going to have to pull that down so I can see my links. Let me go to documentation, and I should be able to go to the content list and webinar and new features. And that is what we should be looking at, I believe. And it definitely is what we should be looking at. And the tab strip control automatically highlights whatever tab you select on the form. And we've been setting that highlight color ourselves. We had a request to make a change so that we could have uniquely colored highlights on the tab. So the new highlight color property will specify the color of that highlight, and it just changes the background of the top portion of the tab. Now, in this case, I've set this value to 955AA5, which is the BP Logic's purplish color. It's kind of a purplish gray sort of color, but it's here up here at the top, tab 1, and as you go from tab to tab, you can see it change. As you can see from the design view, there's no content to any of these tabs. All I'm doing is changing the tab color, and of course, if I wanted to make it a different color, perhaps something a little more subtle, I could certainly do that. I have one too many characters there. So DODFED, let's go ahead and rerun our form. Previously, of course, it was that purple color. And now as the form saves and closes, it is this very subtle light blue color. I think this was the color we were originally using for all of the tabs. It's very subtle, perhaps too subtle for some. And so therefore, we have given you the ability to make a change to that color with the highlight color property. All right, so let's talk about bug fixes. First, problem that specifically exists in 6.0.11. Excel file imports were a little wonky whenever you tried to import them, and sometimes they wouldn't import at all. It was a weird, not a constant problem, I don't think. I think it was an intermittent problem for certain Excel file imports, but it doesn't matter. It was only a problem in 6.0.11. and it was resolved in later versions. Some issues with the home page. Both the import objects and the create new form were throwing unexpected errors whenever you tried to import an object from specifically the home page, or you tried to create a new form specifically from the home page. You're getting some of these weird permissions errors that you shouldn't have gotten. That has been resolved as well. The workspaces menu, the way it's supposed to work, the way it's documented to work, and the way it at least initially worked, was that the workspaces menu would not appear if you were a member of only one workspace. Now, this is much the way the tabbed interface in version 5 worked, where you just didn't have tabs for different workspaces if you were only a member of a single workspace. All you would see at the very top would be the navigation bar. You wouldn't see the tabs. Same thing with the workspaces menu. It should not show up if you have only one workspace assigned to the user. So you should see no menus at all at the top. Well, that's not true. Up in the upper right corner, you should see the drop down for your user profile menu. But other than that, the workspaces menu should be hidden. Something happened. The workspaces menu came back for users that only had one workspace, and we have fixed that. For knowledge views. Now, this was an odd one, and it was an odd one because I could repeat it for some things, but I could not repeat it for other things. If you have a knowledge view that exports a CSV file to a content list folder, and if that folder calls a process every time a file is imported, the process would fail. You could take the CSV file and manually place it in the folder, and it would kick off the process. But because that process was failing, the CSV export wasn't working either. And so this came from a tech support ticket that I jumped through hoops through. I recreated a knowledge view and I ran it, and it exported the CSV file to the folder I wanted, and I was very confused as to why mine worked and the customers did not work. And it turned out that there's this specific chain of events that would break it. So if you didn't call a sub process, you could export the CSV file, everything worked fine, and it appeared in the content list in the appropriate folder. If you did have a process that was kicked off with one of the smart folder actions, such as kick off a process every time a file is placed in this folder, then it would break the CSV export and it wouldn't export the CSV at all. So in any event, it was a weird feature, issue, bug. It's no longer an issue. We've found a resolution for that. Checkboxes and radio buttons. For some reason, and it had to do with the third-party library that we use from Aspazay, I believe, we just needed to update that because it was no longer printing checkboxes or radio buttons on the CSV export. So unless you kind of looked at it real carefully at the CSV export, if you exported a form, everything looked fine until you started looking for a radio button and or a checkbox, and they just weren't being printed out to the PDF file. So that has been fixed. They will now print to PDF. They will now convert to PDF. We updated the Aspazay library. Aspazay is the company that produces the PDF conversion library that we use. So apparently there was some change, an update was required, and we did that. Another bug, dashboards were just not displaying. They were completely inoperative. You couldn't even view them in design view. They weren't showing you what widgets you had on there. There were just like these blank areas on the screen. It's obviously some weird display slash CSS issue that we resolved. Switching case dashboards. Whenever you have a case management application and you have a case open, there is a special menu that appears in the navigation bar that shows you all of your open cases. And theoretically, you should be able to drop that menu down and switch between case 1, case 2, case 3, and whatever. And what was happening was it was acting wonky and it wasn't switching the case dashboards the way that you were expected. Sometimes you'd have to click on it 2 or 3 times to make it switch. Sometimes you would click on it and it would open up the case dashboard in a new window. So there was obviously some weird HTML stuff that needed to be addressed. It was addressed and that's been fixed. In a knowledge view filter, which is where you would most likely come across it, although any time that you could access the activity termination reason in the condition builder, there were 2 not required entries. Now, the way that those were generated, it is true. Both were not required, but they were not required for different reasons. which means that they had different behaviors. So what you would see is not required twice, and that wasn't particularly helpful. So if we go back over here to our knowledge view, which I think will be the quickest and easiest way to show you, and we change this timeline status to timeline activity termination reason, well, we had not required, which at the very first one that says resolved by another user now, and we had not required. A basic difference between these two. Not required generally means there was a needed when condition that was not fulfilled, and therefore this activity was not required to run. But there is another not required. Technically, if I have 2 or 3 users assigned to a task, but the task can be completed by the first user to accept. So in that case, user goes in, he accepts the task, he completes the task. The other 2 users on that task that were assigned to it initially are no longer required. They are not required because the task could be completed by a single user. And that was what this not required meant. But not required and not required don't really tell you much about why it's not required. So this resolved by another user is what we've used now to replace the first of the not required items that appear in the activity termination reason. It is still not required technically, but you need an explanation of why it's not required. And in this case, it's because another user has finished their task, which caused the task to complete. Therefore, any remaining assigned users are no longer required. So we've named that resolved by another user. I have switching case dashboards and case dashboard switching. I'm going to assume that those are the same thing. Group names in import files from file system not replicating. So in the import files from file system, you can choose a group name of files to import. And I'm not entirely sure where that is on the custom task. And I don't think I've left the server. Yeah, I've closed that window where I had those 2 custom tasks open. But in any event, you see it quite a lot where you just say, like export only group names, or in this case, import only items in a specific group. And what was happening was it was importing the items, but the group names for those items were not being replicated into the parent timeline instance whenever those files were imported. So we got the files, but we didn't copy over their group names. Those group names now copy over so that later on in the process, if we need to bifurcate out particular documents that are in a certain group, the timeline knows what group it is now because it had lost that previously. And well, it appears that that is it and all that I have for you. And happily, it is 10:28, so I didn't go over my allotted time today either. Thank you for joining me. Have a great month. For those of you who attend the training webinar, I'll see you on Thursday. For the rest of you, I'll see you next month. Have a great month. So long.